My father had two sons, one of whom was intelligent while the other seemed less so. My older brother resembled our father, while I took after our mother. Even now, if someone were to ask me how we are different, I would confidently say that we are complete opposites. My brother was adventurous, always seeking new experiences. Despite our 5-year age gap, I was the one who got married first. Initially, I was pleased that my spouse quickly bonded with my family, engaging in lively conversations and heated debates. Every evening, we would all gather in my mother's kitchen, sharing a home at my parents' house. My brother enjoyed sipping beer with our father after work, while my mother, being a teacher, rarely left her own quarters. Meanwhile, my wife, Kira, worked shifts as a nurse. Although she didn't have the world at her feet, she passionately embraced lively discussions. Gradually, I started noticing Kira growing closer to my brother, often engaging in spirited debates over a beer. Eventually, they became so entwined that we made the decision to take out a mortgage and move away, just to distance ourselves from Slavic and his newfound love. However, the presence of the third party remained in our family dynamic. Kira frequently used fatigue as an excuse, neglecting household tasks, and increasingly seeking solace with my mother during sunset visits. I had heard stories of daughters-in-law getting along better with their mothers-in-law than their husbands, but I never imagined that I would be a recipient of such an unfortunate circumstance. To make matters worse, Kira would return from her visits to my parents not only with baked goods, but also with alcoholic beverages. Attempts to resolve the issue calmly led to arguments and turmoil. In a desperate attempt to salvage our relationship, I suggested starting a family together. Kira simply shrugged in response, and in that moment, I felt like a complete fool. Just 6 months later, Slavic announced his plans to get married. My soul felt a heavy weight, as if life was taking a turn for the worse. My brother and his fiancée had moved in with our parents for the first time, while my wife, Kira, unexpectedly lost her job, forcing us to give up our mortgage apartment and return to my father's house. My mother was far from pleased. With 2 sons and no men in the house, she lamented, her frustration evident as she juggled checking her students' homework. "When will I get to retire in peace, instead of carrying the burden of you and your families?" she exclaimed. I couldn't help but feel ashamed. It was clear that I needed to find a second job to make ends meet, while Kira settled into life at home. Whenever I mentioned going back to work, she would casually suggest starting a family. However, I felt foolish, as I didn't want a child or the responsibilities that came with a family. The thought of divorce started creeping into my mind, especially with the added weight of the mortgage on my shoulders. The strain on our relationship grew, and although I recognized it, I felt powerless to change anything. So I simply resigned myself to the situation, waiting for the inevitable end. And it didn't take long for that end to arrive. A week before Slaka's wedding, everything exploded into chaos. My mother called me urgently, demanding that I come home, only to find my brother's fiancé locked in a heated altercation with my wife. It was a rather entertaining spectacle, to say the least, with bleached hair scattered across the hallway as Kira and her rival clawed at each other, desperately seeking to hurt one another. "Slava, restrain her," my mother shouted, exasperated. "Why are you just standing there? At least pick your wife up off the floor." Somehow, we managed to separate our wives. I surmised that the fight had arisen from jealousy, but I never imagined Kira would go to such lengths as barging naked into her brother's room. I observed Kira, who was sitting across from me, clearly suffering from a hangover. Standing by her side, I couldn't help but hear her explanation. I didn't really want to do it, but I felt it was necessary to clear the air. I had just come from the bathroom and took a wrong turn, she admitted, rubbing her bruised cheekbone. I couldn't help but tease her about the incident. "And the bed? Why did you get in and take off your robe?" I asked, smirking. Kira shrugged, a sign that she struggled to tell a quick lie. You know I can't lie well, she confessed, a mischievous smirk appearing on her lips. Leaning down towards Kira, who was now sobbing, I squeezed her cheekbones firmly but intentionally. Yes, I've noticed your attraction to him, but remember that Slavik is lazy and adventurous. If you choose to be with him, be prepared to work tirelessly while he enjoys his beer in the evenings. And after your prank, his fiancée might not leave him, but his mother is fed up and will kick them out, I warned, loosening my grip, tears welling up in my eyes. I'm sorry, Kira hissed. I forgive you, I replied, moments before abruptly pulling away and wiping my fingers guiltily. Now, pack your things, I instructed, shocked by the silent cries of Kira's mother coming from the kitchen. With my father returning in a month from his work assignment, the burden of the situation fell on her fragile shoulders. Once again, I felt a deep sense of shame. Whispering softly, I informed my mother of my decision. I'm divorcing Kira, I confessed, gently stroking her shoulder. I'm sorry, Mom. My brother entered the room, his face scrunched up in concern. Slavik paused, glancing at me before raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, really, he admitted. I know, I responded, bringing immense relief to my mother, who sobbed quietly. Mom, we've been discussing it, and we'll move out to a rented place by the end of the week, my brother revealed softly. Mother stood up, let out a sigh, and looked at each of us, a mixture of emotions flickering across her face. You've finally grown up, she remarked. That same evening, Kira was forced to leave. As a parting gift, her future sister-in-law playfully threw her crumpled robe at the back of her head. Ironically, it turned out that in order to claim half of the apartment during the court proceedings, the loan needed to be divided and settled first. Kira withdrew her claim, leaving the courtroom almost as vulnerable as she had been when she attempted to seduce my brother-in-law.